So send up the smoke signals because it appears the Miami Hurricanes have a head coach. I am Omar Kelly, Miami Herald columnist, and joining me is the legend, Barry Jackson. Welcome, 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 Barry. I know this is a tough day for you because you're all nervous. UM is playing for the national championship. You are a Hurricane. But let's get to the Dolphins news. Canes are going to win, by the way. They're going to win in the trenches. They're going to dominate. I don't even have a doubt that I'm correct. But let's talk about Jeff Hafley's hiring. Allegedly it's been reported out. It has not been confirmed as of yet, but I'm sure the Dolphins are in negotiations about him becoming the next head coach of the Miami Dolphins. And your initial reaction to this is what, Barry?
Well, I want to be careful how I phrase this because nobody knows if this guy's going to be a good head coach until we actually see it. We know he's respected. We know he's well regarded around the league. We know a bunch of teams pursued him. We know he has a presence. You can see that from how he comports himself in press conferences. We know Micah Parsons likes him. We know he has a lot of energy, and we know he has a wealth of experience. He got head coaching experience at Boston College, worked as an assistant for 4 different teams, a coordinator for 2 years, Packers top 10 in the league in points allowed, and all of that good stuff. So we know all that. But what bothers me, Omar, about this is this is preordained, and when an opportunity for a proven commodity came up today and Sean McDermott, I don't understand the rush with Halfley. Now, I know what they would say. They would say that Jon-Eric Sullivan has a conviction about this guy. We got to move quickly so he doesn't get on a plane to Nashville and interview with the Titans tomorrow, so he doesn't go to Las Vegas and interview with Tom Brady and Raiders management on Wednesday. But at the same time, I would have rather taken my chances to see if McDermott was interested because you always have Shula and Jesse Minter as fallbacks. They can't interview, or at least Shula can't interview anywhere till next Monday. Kubiak can't interview till next Monday. He would have been a good fallback. So I don't know why the rush. Now, does them not pursuing McDermott bother you at all, or do you think he was not the right guy for this time with the Dolphins in a rebuild?
Here's my thought process on this, Barry. While Sean McDermott has everything that I think the Miami Dolphins need in order to change the culture of this franchise, he's done it in Buffalo. He's won. He just hasn't won the Super Bowl. I'm surprised, but not shocked that he was fired. Rumors have been out there. Harbaugh, Tomlin, McDermott were going to be available this offseason. It's interesting that all 3 of them were, but if I heard it, the Dolphins heard it. If I did my due diligence, the Dolphins did their due diligence. And if we're going to be honest about this, Dolphins are what? Job 10? Has anybody hired anybody? Oh, yes. Atlanta's hired Kevin Stefanski.
For the attractiveness of the job, I wouldn't put him at the bottom. I would say it's more attractive than the Arizona Cardinals.
I would rather have Atlanta. I'd rather have Atlanta than Miami. But yes. Stefanski, it was okay for me. It wasn't going to excite me. I think Atlanta fans are a little bit upset for multiple reasons, but it is what it is. Let's put that to the side. If you're Sean McDermott, Baltimore's available. Pittsburgh is available. The Raiders are available. Tennessee with Cam Ward available. Why would I pick the Dolphins? If I have an opportunity to, Sean McDermott is not going to come cheap. We're talking $17 million a year. He's definitely getting more than Ben Johnson. So if I'm him, why would I pick the Dolphins? And I think if we're going to be honest, I think that the Green Bay ties are important. What I don't like about this alleged hiring is the mouthpieces of the league are putting it out there that, oh, you let him out the building, he's going to go get hired by Tennessee. Oh, he's going to get hired by the Raiders. Oh, he's going to get hired by who else was it again? I'm sure you know. Pittsburgh was one of the interview. I don't care. I don't care. I did not like this hiring from two aspects. One, I generally don't talk about people that I do not know or have not educated myself enough. And a lot of people have hit me with it, with information. Let me read one from somebody I trust. Straight shooter, will demand a standard and won't deviate from it. Also has head coaching experience, will demand his players play to that standard and not be afraid to bench someone that's not. He did it when I was with him at the 49ers, and he was a great DB coach. Okay.
Well, they've gone back to the disciplinarian type, right? Because it's been a roller coaster going back from a guy who likes everyone, who's friends with everyone like McDaniel, to now more of a hard-ass coach. And you understand why they do that. And again, Omar, I have no issue with the hire because nobody knows if he's going to be good or not. He's clearly qualified. My issue is the preordained nature of it, where he's brought back for a second interview today, and 3 minutes after the Dolphins say the interview has just ended, NFL Network reports he's going to be the next coach. So it feels like it was just a ceremonial interview today. It doesn't seem like they were serious about making a decision based off the interview today.
Well, hold on here, Barry. Hold on here. Who has the best connection with Jon-Eric Sullivan? Who has history with Jon-Eric Sullivan? Who is he familiar with? You don't think that Halfley was brought up in his interviews when Jon-Eric Sullivan presented his plan to him? I'm sorry. I've known GMs.
Probably so. But then why bring in 10 people? If you're convinced this is the guy, why waste everybody?
Hold on. When the Dolphins talked to Mike Tomlin in 2007, they were just satisfying the Rooney Rule, and literally they were blown away. Why not have conversation with people and see? I respect this search more than I've respected most for the head coach position because they threw out a wide net. Even though I can tell you Patrick Graham is not qualified. He is probably the worst defensive coordinator I've covered here in 18 years with the Miami Dolphins. And I know he coached the 2019 Miami Dolphins team that wasn't trying to win, but bro, you sucked. Anyway, sorry. Let me.
But I must stop you. Was it seriously a wide net though? Or did they know going into this process he was going to be the guy? Because as I tweeted on Saturday, an agent said it was clear to the other candidates. This was an agent for one of the people who interviewed with the Dolphins, was hoping to get a call back, did not get a call back, said it was clear they were going to hire Halfley unless he screwed it up. So I'm saying if it was preordained, that would bother me only for this reason. Because if something is preordained and you go in with a natural bias towards someone that you're comfortable with and familiar with, then you are not going to be totally open-minded in the process. It's just impossible as a human being to be open-minded if you have a natural inclination to hire someone. So, one thing I want to be clear on, I'm not saying it's a bad hire. I'm not saying that he's going to be a disaster. He's very qualified for the job. But the nature of going into this process with someone you want just concerns me a little bit. It would not have been the way I would have done it with McDermott available. I would have at least made the call.
I'm sure they had some, whether it's a call or a consultant call or a communication with an agent, they've checked in on McDermott. They know where they stand.
I don't know. We both have to report on that before. I guess we talked
further. They both know. They know where they stand. But McDermott probably going to be the front runner of Baltimore. I have not heard what do you think he doesn't want to coach Lamar Jackson? Right.
I mean, that probably would be his preference. But at the same time, if you throw enough money at the guy, I just don't know if you have a proven winner who became available today, why you would not go down that avenue and instead take a risk on someone who we don't know if he's going to be a good head coach or we don't know. And I know Sullivan's comfortable with him. I know he had a conviction about him. I know he has a lot of good qualities. I know he might be a good head coach, but we already know that Sean McDermott is a good head coach. Obviously, he didn't take Josh Allen to a Super Bowl, but I think that was more deficiencies of the roster that Brandon Beane put together. Where he's Jordan Poyer out there at safety. So I don't understand why they couldn't have waited. If they had waited and lost Halfley, then hire Shula, hire Minter, hire Clint Kubiak, who led a Sam Darnold-led offense to third in the league in points. Why the rush. That's the only thing that sort of grates at me a little bit.
I don't disagree with you, Barry, but I do think that they went into this process. The net was wider than a lot of the nets that they've cast previously. And I will say this also, if you go back to 2007, when they hired Cam Cameron and he had initial bad interview, and then they brought him in again, a lot of these teams already know who and what they want to hire. They want an offensive minded guy. What I like about this search was, one, they weren't going after the QB whisperer, the offensive guru. There were a lot of defensive coaches, and a lot of those defensive coaches have alpha personalities. So clearly, to me, there's a understanding what you are missing. Okay, let's put that to the side. I wanted a coach with head coaching experience. Now, I didn't necessarily have to be NFL head coaching experience. I just didn't want this to be the first time you have managed an entire team and managed an entire coaching staff. That was my preference. Now, would I have interviewed McCarthy? Probably would. Probably. Was I interested in Stefanski? I wasn't. But if you'd handed him the job, I would have probably been okay with it because he had experience. He'd failed. He'd succeeded. I'm okay with that. What my issue is, like you, I really don't feel the rush. Now, if you absolutely knew this was who you wanted and you didn't want him to get out of the building and you didn't want him to go and woo Tennessee, or you didn't want him to win over the Raiders, I think the Raiders are a very attractive job. Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody's heard a word.
Right, with Mendoza.
Everybody's interviewing down here in Miami because, Tom Brady gets it that way. I wonder if they're going on a yacht. Like, Tom Brady likes to do his secret talks. Sorry for those who don't get that, but
so I'm trying to figure out, why is this a wildly unpopular choice among fans? I guess one reason is how the season ended for Halfley, blowing an 18-point lead against the Bears. And I think the other is just the feeling that the GM is bringing in his buddy. So I understand all that.
That's what they all do.
That's what they all do, exactly. Two positives about Halfley that I'll note are these. It's clear that Jon-Eric Sullivan's a very bright guy. He's been around Halfley for 2 years. And you would have to think Halfley would have been impressive for Jon-Eric Sullivan to want. Jon-Eric Sullivan isn't bringing him on because they're friends. He's bringing him on because he's got a conviction about the guy. Mm-hmm. So that's certainly a positive that I think should encourage Dolphins fans. Second thing that's a positive is the amount of interest in him. And I know some of it was agent generated. However, Tennessee was going to bring him in for a second interview as a finalist. The Raiders were as well. There was legitimate interest. So I think those would be the two things that are encouraging about it. So again, it's not that I have a problem with the hire. He might turn out to be a perfectly good coach. I just would have rather given it more time to check on McDermott. And if you lose Halfley, you lose Halfley. You get one of the two or three other guys who would have been perfectly fine, like Shula or Kubiak. I will add this as well. This is a risky move for the Dolphins because the fans have suffered enough. And if it doesn't work out, and if McDermott goes somewhere and wins big, and even more so if Chris Shula gets a job, and I know he was linked to Pittsburgh earlier, and he wins big, then it's going to be crushing, devastating, debilitating to a fan base that already has had so much aggravation, so much heartache. So it's risky that way.
We're used to it now. Come on.
Exactly. I must ask you this question. Do the 4 years at Boston College make a difference to you? Because I know you just made the point that you wanted someone with experience. I mean, it was a record below 500, but he did have 3 winning seasons, and then he had a 3-9 at a place it's hard to win. Is that a positive to you that he's been a college and FBS head coach?
Absolutely, it's a positive. I heard all kinds of excuses about how they weren't paying money, and they weren't paying, NIL, the NIL era. And I get it. University of Miami's coach, basketball coach,
Jay Lucas, who they got from Duke.
No.
Oh, you're talking about the previous one, Jim Larrañaga.
Yeah. Larrañaga, excellent coach. Couldn't deal with this NIL era. And I I understand. I'm not sucking up to a 18-year-old making $1 million. It's just not how I'm going to operate. I'm not wired that way. And so I understand why he came back to the college game. But I would have loved to have had somebody who rose up the ranks with success in college and then said, okay, let me go to the NFL. You know who you replaced in Green Bay? Joe Barry.
Joe Barry. Exactly. Yeah. I looked that up today to see I was trying to remember how it ended for Joe Barry. He was fired there. So I was thinking to myself, defensive coordinator candidates, would he be one here? Well, yeah. I mean, he's an impressive guy, but they fired him. So that would seem unlikely.
Yes. And I like the fact that he has experience. Would I have liked for him to have had more success? Absolutely. I have watched a lot of his press conferences, not from Green Bay. I wanted to see the head coach version of him. It's okay. There is some presence, which I like, I respect. I gravitate to that. People vouch for him and say that he's a good coach. To me, does that mean or guarantee you're going to have success? No. Look at the last round of 9 coaches that got hired when Mike McDaniel were hired. All but one has been fired, and that's in Minnesota. Everybody else has been whacked 4 years later. This is just the nature of the business. And I liked a lot of those candidates. I liked Brian Daboll. I liked Doug Peterson. I liked a lot of those candidates. There's no guarantee it's going to work out. There has to be a synergy between the GM, the head coach, and they have to build it together. Now, as you were mentioning, the Dolphins have not made anybody available to us from in terms of Jon-Eric Sullivan's the hiring. He's doing his job. He's preparing for the draft and trying to build his staff and doing a head coach search. And that's cool. And they want to bring both of them together for us so that, we can talk to them together, which makes sense. It's in unison.
Right. Probably at some point this week, he has to sign a contract first. Jeff Hafley does as a head coach before they do. But I would think for people asking about press conference, it's going to be a joint press conference. And I would think at some point this week.
Yeah. I like the fact that they're going to build it similar to how they built it in Green Bay. I have a ton of respect for what Jon-Eric Sullivan has done and accomplished in Green Bay. He's been a loyal person. He's been there 20 years, never left, never worked his way up, bootstraps, pulled himself up from by the bootstraps. And I like the Green Bay culture. They built Seattle. They built New England. Both of those teams are probably playing in the Super Bowl. That's the culture that built those programs. Clearly, we got to get the quarterback right. And, and we got to be good at evaluating talent. I don't know. I don't know that. I don't know that.
Because he's not had final call there. Obviously, he worked with Ted Thompson now, Brian. Because we just don't know if he has final call. One of the interesting things I thought he said in the in-house interview yesterday, Omar, with Travis Wingfield was, these are going to be my decisions. I'm going to get input from people who work here, but these decisions on every personnel move that we make, the buck stops with me. And we both probably thought the same thing after we heard that it was the exact opposite with Greer.
No. Greer used to say the buck stops with me. It doesn't mean that it applies.
But Greer deferred to others is a point that I'm making. While with Sullivan, he's not going to defer to others. He's going to sign the player, draft the player that he thinks is right. I guess a lot of things he said yesterday were things that Dolphins fans would want to hear as far as building a team that's ready to win in cold weather, prioritizing the draft. It's interesting that he said with free agency, he talked about how it could be disruptive with the team's culture and chemistry if you're bringing in guys who haven't been there long term. And then he said with free agents, I only really am interested in impact guys. That was interesting to me because most teams use free agency to fill out the roster and fill needs. Most of the Dolphins free agent signings last year were lower priced guys just to fill needs, right? The Larry Borums of the world, Pharaoh Brown, who didn't make the team. So I would imagine he's going to have to use free agency some just for those guys to be a third and fourth linebacker. He can't draft everybody who's going to be a rotation player next year.
What's interesting, Barry, and clearly I've done this too long. You've probably done it longer than I have. I've done this too long. I've been here 18 years. I've heard the same BS from everybody, from coaches to GMs to front office executive. It's always the same thing.
That Chris Greer first press conference that you retweeted a couple days ago. His words were what again in 20?
Oh, he was gonna build through the draft, and he's gonna build a trench. He did everything opposite of what he said he was gonna do. Right. And that's what happens when you start whiffing and you start making mistakes and you start pressing, and then you change regimes and coaches, and they want to do their own flavor, and you're a people pleaser. It's the same old cycle, Barry. Now, what I will say is Jon-Eric Sullivan couldn't draft worse than Chris Greer.
Right. I wouldn't think it could possibly be worse. But the question I have for you is this. I've been very public about the fact that I think this is a 2 or 3 year rebuild. I think this is a mammoth rebuild. They have maybe 5 to 10 players who are worth keeping long term. Can this be turned around quickly? I don't see how it possibly could. You need 2 starting receivers to pair with Waddle. When I say 2 starting, I mean obviously a slot as well.
No. You do not need 2 starting receivers to pair with
3 edge guys. Omar Kelly, you need 3 edge guys.
Do.
Chuck Robinson's maybe a number 4. If you get rid of Minka for cap reasons, you need 2 starting safeties. You can't
count on
get
rid of Minka for cap reasons. You don't need to
2
get
corners. And another defensive lineman. How is all of this going to be accomplished in one off season? It's not going to be. It's not going to be. So to me, it's a 2 or 3 year plan. Next year's probably going to be miserable, but we suck it up. Maybe we get Arch Manning, and then everyone will be happy. No.
If you look at every coach that has been here in their first year, with the exception of Brian Flores, they've had success. Since Tony Sperano, playoffs his first year. No, Joe Philbin did not have playoffs his first year. But I think his first year was his best season. Then you have Adam Gase, playoffs his first year. Brian Flores did not have playoffs his first year, but that was a tank year. And then you have Mike McDaniel, playoffs his first year. Now,
but with a vastly better team than Halfley's going to have. So if Halfley gets a stripped down team, if Sullivan says, I'm going to deal with all the cap issues this year, I'm going to get rid of Mink, I'm going to get rid of Chubb, obviously he's going to get rid of Tyreek, obviously he's going to get rid of Tua. There's no indication that he wants Tua. So if you strip down and Halfley's a good enough coach to win 5 games like Flores was, and you see Arch Manning go to the Jets who win 2 games, then will the year have been productive? Or then will people say, what a miserable experience? Yes, Halfley can coach, but we don't get our quarterback. That would be my concern with stripping it down. And I know you have to strip it down, but that would be my concern if they have enough good players where they win more to be in position to draft the impact quarterback.
I've learned my lesson from tanking. There's nothing good that comes from tanking. I'm sorry. It's losing is rooted into your DNA when you do that.
I couldn't disagree with you more. If they had tanked, they'd have Joe Burrow. I'm not a fan of tanking either, but if you're going to do it, as we've talked about repeatedly, do it correctly. Go all in. Have Josh.
We could have broken Joe Burrow just as much as we broke Tua. Like, you don't know that. You don't know how Tua. Like, we have these fantasies that Drew Brees would have come here and been a Hall of Famer. We probably would have broke Drew Brees too. This is who we are, Barry.
It's going to be an organic tank. I'm telling you right now. It's going to be a team that's stripped down, that's not going to be very competitive next year, and that's not going to be anybody's fault. It has to be done just to erase the huge mess that Chris Greer left.
I'm not buying the fact that this will not be a competitive team. How
is this going to be a competitive team with all these needs? Now, even if Sullivan nails all 5 picks, it's still hard to see them as a contender for a wild card. I mean, maybe if he nails the first round pick, the second round pick, the 3 picks in the third round, if they all come in,
he's going to nail 5, Barry. He's going to nail 5.
They're decent.
You got 5. You got 5 who played last year. Give me another 5 that play.
Well, it's funny, the 5 people he picked yesterday. I don't want to form too many conclusions from the 5 building blocks he met yesterday because he couldn't name everybody. But it was interesting. Didn't mention a quarterback, which should tell us that
we already know the franchise is ready to move on.
Didn't mention 2 of their best players, with Minka and Chubb, who both probably need to go for cap reasons.
Oh, I thought you were referring to Tyreek.
Well, Tyreek, obvious. I mean, there's no one who questions.
Minka and Chubb. Both of those individuals have some say in what's going to happen with their future. So
Right.
I
Both of you
can't.
have to take a pay cut and say no.
Who gonna take a pay cut?
I mean,
Me?
both of those guys could be asked to take a pay cut. It's hard to imagine Chubb doing it again. I'm not sure why Minka would do it again.
No, I think I've always suspected Minka doesn't want to be here, didn't want to be here, probably still doesn't want to be here. So, like, what happens there happens there. With Chubb, he does want to be here. He'll probably accept another pay cut. The question is, what does the contract look like, and what are the other options? He does. He actually does want to be here. I've had this conversation with him, and it's not just he's settled in. He likes it, and he's growing into a leadership role. But yes, they mentioned Jalen Waddle, who could easily be traded. He mentioned Javon Achane, who's going to shake you down for a $50 million contract. He mentioned Patrick Paul, who's going to play one more year and then shake you down for a $100 million contract. He mentioned
Brooks and Brewer. We're the final.
Brooks and Brewer, who are both going to be shaking you down for a new contract this year. So, and that's my point. That's my point. You never know how these things are going to play out. It's not a one-sided street. This isn't like this. While this isn't like the NIL where I can pick up and transfer every year if I feel like it. Players have control over this situation. Jordan Brooks will have some control over his situation. Aaron Brewer will have control over his situation. Minka Fitzpatrick will have control over his situation. Bradley Chubb will have control over his situation. And so will Devon Achane. Jalen Waddle, probably not so much control, but he was already on the trading block once. Who says you won't sell him now?
Yeah, I would not sell those 5 pieces. I thought it was encouraging that Sullivan mentioned them as building blocks, because even though I'm concerned about not having a high enough pick for Arch Manning, I know I kind of sound like I'm contradicting myself. I still think that you do need quality players as building blocks. I don't want to flip the few good players you have for draft picks, because how do you know the draft picks are going to be nearly as good as those 5 players? Speaking specifically of Achane and Waddle. So yeah. I think they're going to be good enough to not get the first pick, but not close to being a contender. And that's not going to be anybody's fault, because there are just too many needs on this team to fill in one offseason.
Barry, you know what was supposed to be a great quarterback draft class?
Which
2026.
Right.
And
there's one guy. So
there's one guy. And he wasn't even on the list of guys that you were supposed to watch.
Right.
Keep that in mind. So we don't know. We don't know. And this happens all the time. All these quarterbacks that are supposed to be great at LSU and Penn State and UCLA or wherever, or Arizona, whatnot. Some fizzle. Some Cam Ward came out of nowhere. He
right.
Like
someone's going to emerge next year, and it could be Darian Mensah at UM. Who knows? But I'll tell you what I don't want to see next year. I'm going to tell you this right now. I do not want to see a bridge veteran caretaker quarterback. I want to invest in youth at the position. If they can't get someone better than Quinn Ewers, then I want to see Quinn Ewers for 8 games.
Hold on, wait a minute. You're not going to ride the Malik Willis train?
Well, I think it's going to be too costly. I know everyone's concluding now because we're
Green Bay. You don't know that.
I've gone through the math, and I know the cap's not real to you, but I've gone through the math. They would have to get rid of so many players to make room for Willis. And I know you can structure it in a way where there's more of a cap it down the road, but there's still an initial cap it.
What are you paying Willis?
Is high for him.
What are you paying Willis?
I was shocked that Dan Orlovsky said it's going to take 40 to 50. That sounds crazy.
That guy didn't even start. Exactly. Sam Darnold is making $40 million.
So Justin Fields got 2 years, 22. Obviously, he had starting experience, wasn't very good in Chicago, and that's what the Jets paid him. So Willis is worth what to you?
Three at 12 to 15 a year. 2 guaranteed, $30 million. Why would I make a huge investment in a guy who hasn't started an NFL game?
But someone might, because of desperation. I mean, someone's going to sign two off the streets.
And best of luck to them. Then I'll just go with the former Alabama starter for New England.
Mac Jones, but he's under contract in San
Francisco. And I'll just go with Mac Jones. If it's not Mac Jones, I'll make a trade for Baker Mayfield. I don't care. It's we will have our opportunity to assess and evaluate the quarterback situation I really don't care what these people do, to be honest with you, because history says none of it's going to work. So
well, at some point, I would say, even as negative as I can be sometimes, and we both grew up here, we both experienced 25 years of awfulness, as negative and downtrodden that I can be at times over the Dolphins from growing up a Dolphins fan and seeing all of this, I do think their luck has to turn at some point. It's just the odds of life that at some point they're going to get fortunate, they're going to make good decisions. I will add this about the coach. I will add this about the coach. Here's one thing that you and I don't agree on. I think the importance of the coach, and I know people are going to say I'm nuts, vastly overrated with a rebuild. And I know you're big on setting a culture like Flores did. To me, what Jeff Hafley does next year is maybe 5 to 10% of where the franchise ends up in 2 or 3 years. To me, it's all about the players that Sullivan drafts, the players he signs in undrafted free agency, and how he finds a quarterback. I'm not bothered by the Jeff Hafley signing or him coming in as coach, just because I don't think it's that important in the first year. I know you want a culture setter. I know that's very important to you. But to me, when you're not ready to win and half the roster is going to be turned over in 2028 anyway, to me, that's not nearly as important as the GM's role.
I will say this, Barry. You're right. It does come down to the talent that you select. It also comes down to the player development that these coaches make. And it comes down to the play callers on offense and defense. We still have plenty to figure out in those regards. But reality is, Barry, at some point, the tide has to turn on this franchise. You're right. We saw the Hurricanes in the wilderness for 2 decades. And now the one thing that the Hurricanes can potentially do tonight is end the seminal curse of that stadium being on a burial ground.
It's the Tequesta curse.
Yes,
what's brought the Dolphins down for 25 years.
Yes, it's brought the Dolphins down since the Hurricanes have moved to that stadium. They've been nobody and nothing. We could end it today. We can end it tonight, Barry. So yes, and then the Dolphins officially have absolutely no excuse to continue to F this up. Now, can I guarantee you that they won't? No, I cannot. But you know what? We'll see how this plays out. We'll see what they say. More than likely, I'm guessing a press conference comes to us about Thursday or Friday. They'll take it to they'll make sure you have something for the weekend to nibble on to sell you that hope, Barry.
And they'll say all the right things. And these are 2 smart guys. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. But you know what? Not a damn thing that they say Thursday or Friday is going to mean a thing. What it comes down to is how Jon-Eric Sullivan performs in late April and how he finds a quarterback. It all comes down to that. All the press conference stuff is just
he's not going to. Okay, he's not going to find a quarterback right now. I don't think he's going to.
Just don't waste my time with a veteran retread next year. Invest all of your snaps on young guys, on Quinn Ewers. If they sign Malik Willis,
does Malik Willis qualify as a veteran retread?
No, I'd be fine with that. I just don't want a 30-year. I don't want Marcus Mariota wasting all of our time with 11 games started next year. Give all of the starts next year to guys who you think have a chance to maybe be the guy, meaning Ewers, whatever young guy they draft, and Willis, I guess, would be the one guy that they could conceivably bring in, who obviously would qualify as a young guy and not a veteran.
Mac Jones qualifies as a young guy. He's still developing. I think he can. It depends on what they want to run, and that depends on who the offensive coordinator is. We shall see, Barry. Thank you for joining us on the Dolphins In-Depth podcast. You know how to find Barry now that he's got his Twitter account back, Florida Sports Buzz. Congratulations. I'm still trying to safeguard my Twitter, Barry, because I can't afford to lose it. And on that note, we will be back later this week to wrap up what the new general manager and the new head coach has said moving forward. On that note, we are out, and let's go Canes.